They allowed the majority white society to co-opt the black Constitution and promote the myth that the United States Constitution was colorblind. The Constitution was conceived as a socio-economic covenant for those who already had power, wealth, and nearly unlimited rights. To be a truly democratic society, this nation would have to redistribute and share some of wealth and power with black America. The black Constitution was passed following the Civil War because of the efforts of a small group of radical liberal Republican congressmen who succeeded in amending the Constitution by including color-specific amendments for blacks. These amendments gave blacks a minimum level of rights that certain congressmen hoped would offset some of the tyranny of the white majority society. Population monopolies. One of the first acts of the U.S. Congress following the ratification of the Constitution was the enactment of this nation's first naturalization and immigration law in 1790. This law declared America to be a white nation and set a zero quota on black immigrants, except as slaves. A quota of approximately zero remained in effect until 1965. From 1790 to 1965, when it was in man, look here, man. No, man. When it was increased to its current level of 0.5%. Throughout most of this nation's history, peoples of African descent have nearly shut out of the immigration and refugee programs of the United States. Blacks have competed in this nation's majority wins population game almost exclusively from birth rates rather than immigration. Though they could never win as a national majority, they also have never won as a local majority. The black civil rights movement's quest for integration ensured that blacks would always be a minority population in white schools, businesses, jobs, communities, or entertainment centers. The census is conducted every decade and establishes the official population count of the country. Efforts to create a multicultural category in the 2000 census will most likely dilute and in reality distort downward the number of blacks in America. That dilution of population numbers assures that blacks will lose status as the numerical majority minority. Government efforts to change racial definitions will retain the white population majority monopoly and inflate the numbers of Hispanics in the population. In this book, Uprooting Racism, Paul Cavell says, whiteness is a many-faceted phenomenon, slowly and consistently shifting its emphasis all the time, maintaining a racial hierarchy and protecting the power that accrues to white people. Although there are no natural or essential qualities or characteristics of whiteness or of white people, it is not an easy fiction to let go of by constantly enlarging ethnic boundaries of whiteness. All Europeans, Middle Easterners, Hispanics, and soon Asians. Whites separate people who are entitled to privileges and wealth from people who are exploited and violated. In a group-based society, constant efforts to enlarge the majority white population ensure that a shared racial population monopoly will continue to exist far into the future. The 2000 census form offers blacks 54 subcategories to opt out of their race and further atomize their population numbers. The census will not dilute whiteness. On the contrary, it further expands the definition of whiteness. Let's look at how a shared white monopoly impacts black Americans' life chances. Whites are a planned majority. Blacks, on the other hand, are a planned permanent minority. Limited by immigration policies, blacks are only 12.4% of the general population. They are outnumbered 7-1 by a shared white majority that is 87% of the population. This means that whites can override blacks at least 7 times, making it impossible for blacks to take over anything. Moreover, with the exception of entertainment, blacks do not exceed 1% of the ownership, control, or representation of anything positive in American society. In critical skilled professions such as doctors, lawyers, lawyers, architects, engineers, scientists, judges, physicists, business owners, wealth holders, and elective officials. Blacks never exceed 1/2 of 1%. If every black professional was hired in the public sector or private sector jobs, whites would still hold approximately 99.5 of the sector jobs. Whites would still hold on. If every black professional was hired in public sector or private sector jobs, whites would still hold approximately 99.5% of the professional positions. If all of the 36 million black people in the entire country were employed, the educated, the uneducated, senior citizen, those in prison, children, infants, teenagers, their total numbers could never exceed 12% of the workforce. When blacks try to even marginally increase their percentage in the workforce, whites are threatened and initiate a backlash. Wealth monopolies. Slavery and Jim Crow semi-slavery did not just make whites a little bit richer than blacks. Whites are vastly richer. They have deprived black people of nearly a whole economic pie. It is the proportion of the pie that a group owns that determines its access to functional schools, competitive businesses, equal justice, essential health care, personal comfort, and the length and quality of their lives. The nature of white wealth has cut blacks off from nearly all of these fundamentals of life. White society not only owns or controls most of the nation's wealth and power resources, but most of it is passed on from one generation of whites to the next. This is the only reason why there is a lower proportion of whites who are poor compared to the number of poor blacks, and why the children of affluent white parents are less likely than blacks to ever become poor. Wealth is frozen and stored inside the white race, in its family culture, businesses, churches, communities, education systems, and organizations in the form of stocks, bonds, land, insurance policies, trust accounts, and foundations. It is inconceivable that blacks could cross racial boundaries and successfully displace the frozen forms of wealth. As indicated in Table 1, whites own nearly 100% of all corporate bonds and stocks, which amounts to approximately 13 trillion. In 1986, the 256th largest company of the Fortune 500, a white corporation, had sales equal to the 16 billion total combined sales of the nation's 100 largest black-owned businesses as listed in the August 2000 edition of Black Enterprise magazine. While the wealth gap continues to widen between blacks and whites, the number of millionaires and billionaires increases. During the 1980s, for example, the number of millionaires and billionaires also increased by 300 and 500% respectively. Although a handful of black entertainers and sport figures are included in the millionaire category, their standing is most often a result of increased income, which is not the same as increased wealth. Moreover, none of the wealthiest black entertainers and athletes appear on the Forbes list of the wealthiest 500. Y'all hear this? You see, I'm tired, been working, but I'm still finding the time to get in front of this camera and read this book to y'all. I just want y'all to see what's going on, man. These people have been playing us since day one, and they're going to continue to play us until we wake up. A lot of our people still stuck in a coma, but we're going to have to wake up first, and then we're going to have to go get them, and then wake them up and get them on the front line. We definitely at war right now, and it's war of the mind. You feel me? Once you get your mind right, everything else going to follow and change. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you touch, everything you smell, everything you eat is going to change when their mind changes.